So good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for the organization. I want to thank Peter who talked before me, because it's very important when migrants themselves, they start building up associations to help themselves and to help people who have who are in the conditions they were when they arrived in Europe. Baobab Experience is an informal camp in Roma. It is an informal camp because Roma is probably one of the few cities in the world that doesn't have a hub for first reception of migrants arriving in the city. We have it all started almost 2 years ago when people started arriving in Roma from the landings in the shores in the southern part of Italy, and they started arriving hundreds per day. At the end of May, we had almost 700, 800 persons living in the street right near Tiburtina station, which is the second most important station, train station in Roma. And so it's like solidarity started from citizens. Women, men of every age, every profession, they started working with this migrant, trying to help them. And since people was keep on arriving and bringing things, we started organizing the distribution, we started organizing the lines to eat, we started organizing doctors who would visit people. Most of them, they all came from Africa. It's important to say I've been on the Balkan route quite a few times, but we are talking about the Mediterranean route. So we have people, a lot of people, almost more than 50% of them, they come from Eritrea and Ethiopia, and the others come from Sudan, from Somalia, they come from sub-Saharan Africa and Saharan Africa. It started really, nobody would have thought that we've gone this far. We thought it was going to be for a few days, then for a few weeks, then for a few months, waiting for the government, for the city council to do something and to organize something for migrants. That didn't happen, and it still didn't happen. So we had a second summer last summer, and we are about to get in the third summer since Baobab Experience was born, that we don't have any place for migrants. They sleep in tents in the middle of a square near the station, and this is a situation. Rome, year 2017, and nobody seems to care. You know, in Italy there is a big discussion about this, and most of the political forces, they are afraid to deal about the migrant issue. They're afraid that if they say, yes, we have to help migrants, they're going to lose votes, they're not going to get many votes. The street that you see many times in this video is the small street near the station where we were until the last 30th of September. Yes, this street, Via Cupa, with tents. And this is what Roma offered for a year and a half. We are lucky that in Roma it isn't too cold in the winter, it isn't too rainy, but it is a difficult situation. We started working with migrants, helping migrants. Many of them were underage, unaccompanied underage. And you have to imagine that the migrants that get here, they get to Italy and to Roma after a terrible journey. The journey lasts from 8 months to a year and a half. They leave, for example, from their village in Eritrea, they go to Ethiopia, from Ethiopia they go to Sudan, they stay quite a few weeks in in Ethiopia, in Sudan, in this camp. Then they have to cross the desert, and nobody tells us that 3 or 4% of the migrants who cross the desert don't make it. You know, we, a little bit, not too much, a little bit we talk about the death in the sea because of the shipwrecks. Nobody talks about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who die in the desert. You know, they go with these pickups, these trucks, that us, we would be probably uncomfortable in 6 or 7 person. They go in these trucks in 30, 40 person. The trucks goes, if somebody falls off, which is very common and very easy to happen, the truck won't stop. Will keep on his journey. So either you're lucky to jump on a truck that's behind you, or that's going to be the end for the migrant. And this situation is makes it so that all these young people, when they get to Italy, they have plenty of problems. We say always, when they ask us what should you need with migrants arriving, well, we need thousands of psychologists, for example. I mean, I'm worried. I have 2 little girls. I'm worried when they have to cross, I don't know, the city. A 15-year-old girl crossing Roma, and so I say, hey, call me when you get there. Call me when you get at grandma's house. Can you imagine a 12-year-old doing this journey? And then the camps in Libya. The camps in Libya, they stay 5 months, 3 months, 5 months, and it's they work 15 days, 15 hours per day in construction for warlords of the different group in Libya. And they are used and exchanged as if they were money from one warlord to the other. I give you 3 of this, you give me 1 of this, I give you 2 boys, you give me a girl. And when it's night, they serve for the pleasure of these warlords and of their soldiers. All the girls, all the boy, even young boys, serve the pleasure of these people. They are sexually abused, they are tortured. So this is the situation. And after 3-4 months, they get to cross the Mediterranean Sea, and if they make it, if they are not in the party. In 2016 was a record. 5,500 people drowning in the Sicily Channel. This year, the numbers we have for 2017 say that this year we will beat that record. And nobody says anything. Worst, government like the Italian government, what do? They make a treaty with Libya saying keep them there, keep them in those camps. We don't want to see them. It's like if we don't want to see these people. And instead, I think there is something that we have to appreciate about what's happening, and Peter was talking about it. There is something that's happening in Europe. I've been traveling from the islands, from the Greek island or the Turkish shore, and the northern countries like Sweden or England or Belgium or France, activists and volunteers in Calais, young students in Ceuta and Melilla, which is Spain territory. They are helping migrants. And so Baobab Experience is part of this network. Of this network that has to organize better, but that is a civil society network that doesn't ask anything else than that respect of human rights and the right to help somebody. You know, I had during these 2 years 5 charges from the police. We've been evicted 10 times. People have been sent away. We have to pay fines because we put the tents or we cook for them. Working with migrants, we started realizing that welcoming is the right thing to do, that they need reception, that you can easily do it, and that reception is not something you have to give like this, and it's not something that it's how do you say that? You say I have to give you, you know, a clean shirt, hot dish of food. No, it's not that. As I was saying before, we are talking about young person. Many young. When they're not young, they're 20, they're 22, they're 23, which is very young, you know. And but really, average age of 16, 17, 15. They need people that talk with them. They need to know where they are. Many of them, with no scholarization, they arrive and, I don't know, maybe they think they're in Germany, they think they're in England, they have no idea. They need people to talk, they want to tell their stories. It's like, before we were talking about the inhumane conditions. Well, what reception is about, what welcoming refugees is about, is a rehumanization of these people. And I think if you don't do that, you are committing a crime. I think, you know, in Hungary, but in Italy, you know, Europe, we've had World War II, you know, and then suddenly it happened, and we had the Shoah, and then we had Nazism, fascism in Italy, in Hungary, and then somebody asked, well, where were you, you know? And there were many people who just pretended that it's so. There are thousands of people arriving, which is not an invasion, so it's easy to people to have, but the institution that the European laws are not good laws. And I think we should start thinking at the difference between what is legal and what is right. And I think that there is some civil disobedience, for example, that we have to start to reconsidering. I mean, I'm not here at the Gates Cambridge to invite people to do I don't know what, but I mean, let's think about at the history of the last century. For example, segregation in the United States. Wasn't such a long time ago. At the end of the 60s, well, there were some young students from the East Coast, from the West Coast, who went in some states where the law said black people cannot go in bar, they cannot go in the university, they cannot go in the cafe, they cannot go on the buses, they cannot go in the school. And they said, we don't think it's right. We will disobey, and we will take them in the bus, we will take them to school, we will take them to the restaurant, we will take them to take a coffee. They were outlaws because they weren't respecting the law. But they did something that changed even the history of the United States until you got maybe a president like Obama, which was, imagine thinking of it, at the end of the 60s, so I was already born. It wasn't such a long time ago. Well, a little bit, yes. But, and, or in South Africa, apartheid. The apartheid system started to came down when young white people living in South Africa said, why should I stay in this beach and my friend cannot come here because of the color of his skin? And I think now, more or less, with all the difference, the situation is similar. If I see somebody in the street, I don't care if he doesn't have a passport, if he doesn't have a paper that says he can stay here. I don't care if he went away from his country because they were bombing him or because he was hungry. Because this is what we're talking about. There is no war in your country, you can go back there. Do you know that there is no more water in Ethiopia and in Eritrea? And do you know that the regimes of Eritrea and Ethiopia, which are fighting one with the other, are very similar But for example, we accept Eritrean refugees. We accept Eritrean refugees, but not Ethiopian. We give protection to Eritrean because we believe, this is we countries and government of the Western world, we believe it's a terrible dictatorship. Italy gives protection to Eritrean because it's a terrible dictatorship. They don't have a place, I mean, to put them in Roma, but we give them protection. Well, can you imagine that Italy is a country that sells the most amount of weapons to this dictatorship? So can you imagine a government that says, that is a dictatorship, I give protection to the people running away from because it's a dictatorship, but I sell the dictatorship weapons. So when they tell me, well, what can we do about migration? For example, we don't sell weapons to this dictatorship. Could be an idea. Maybe this dictatorship doesn't have weapons. Maybe they won't run away, or they can send away the government. So these are all the. I mean, migration brings a lot of issues. For example, as I was saying before, the issue of perception. How important it is to show migrants not that we tolerate them, that we want them, that we are happy to welcome them. And can you imagine in the city of Rome, Rome has more or less 10 million visitors per year. People spending thousands of euros, dollars, yens, from all over the world coming to visit Roma. Well, who deserves more to visit Roma? A 15-year-old guy from Ethiopia, Eritrea, who took 1 year and a half to get here, who had violence, who has seen the death with his family, who survived a shipwreck, and he's in Roma. You know there is nobody bringing migrants in Roma to visit Roma? They are put in this center outside of the city when they ask asylum, or not when they first arrive. Of course, when they first arrive, they have nothing. And they have never seen the Colosseum, St. Peter. So we started working with associations, student association, cultural association. Every day, volunteers will come in Yakuba, in Baobab, take the migrant, and what do you want to see? You want to see today Colosseum, you want to see St. Peter. And you know, if you bring an Islamic person to St. Peter, it's a good thing. And if you bring an Ethiopian Orthodox to see the big mosque in Rome, it's a good thing. That I call preventing terrorism. That is the best way to take away arguments from integralism, from terrorism, from radicalism. We have Christians and Muslims and Copts and people from all the religion, the African or the Middle East religion, walking hand in hand. We never had problem. Each one respect the prayer of the other one. How many times it's us building these kinds of walls between persons? We didn't have not one religious problem, and we had even 1,200 persons per day sleeping in the street, staying not in a comfortable situation. But investing in reception is the best way in investing for security. I get mad. In Italy, the Italian parliament yesterday, the day before yesterday, voted something on migration, something terrible. I mean, now it's not, maybe we'll discuss it later. And the whole thing is built, like the issue of migration is very much related to the issue of security for European citizens. And we don't have, we're not like in Hungary, we don't have a, we have a center-left government, you know, it's crazy. What has migration to do with our security? if we don't start changing things in our head, in the way of considering the migration issue, we will never get to an end. We will never understand what is happening. It was funny, a few weeks ago, we took them, we had 60 people in the street. You know, this is winter. In a few weeks, then we will have 100, 150 until we will get up to the numbers over 500, almost 1,000 during the summer. We had 60. We have 60. We have some Kurds now. We have, of course, Eritreans. We have Somali. We took them skating, ice skating, a couple of weeks ago, and it was straight, 60 people. They had never seen such a big thing of ice. Coming, of course, from Africa. We had so much fun. And it was this place, not in the center of Roma, where people, you know, read books, read paper, but we were outside of Roma. It's this big center, in a difficult neighborhood that has social problems, that it's easy when you have problems to say, you know, it's a migrant's fault, it's them stealing my job, and all the things, the stupid things we hear and we read about migration. So when we got in, it was a Sunday morning, everybody was looking at us. What do they want them in our neighborhood? Well, can you imagine after 3 hours everybody was laughing in seeing us and them trying to ice skate in Roma in a Sunday morning? Well, at the end, you know, there was an applause from all the people. And then somebody said, hey, come on, we'll go prepare a dish of pasta. And so finally somebody met other people who had thought, and maybe on the paper you would read migrant, they can come here, I don't know what they can do. So integration is not difficult. There is only one way to make it difficult. It's to close the borders, to build walls, to say it's a problem, to say they come here to, I don't know, to change our culture. I mean, Europe's history, fortunately, is made of big changes. And the Italians especially should shut up. We went everywhere. When we went in the United States, and we went to Belgium, we went to Germany, we went in Australia, in South America, you know, and they would say, oh, the Italian mafiosi, pasta, pizza, mandolino, they don't work. Now they're pretty into societies everywhere. So absolutely, the first thing to defeat when you talk about migration is fear. And you don't even have to say, oh, migrants, they are all wonderful. I mean, the average is the same one. As European, African, Asians, North Americans, South Americans, there is no, you find somebody who is nicer, somebody who is not so nice. It's not, it's difficult, you know, it's difficult to talk with migrants. It is difficult when two culture meets. It's of course the thing is that you have to understand that you give them something and they give you something. What you really have to understand is that we are in a time of history that there are people who need help, and helping them is a duty. I think if you don't help these people, you really are guilty of silence. And I really think when I see my daughters and I imagine having grandchildren and say, hey, but where were you? I am reading there were people dying in the sea, in the desert. They came here and they had nothing to eat. So we really have to start acting and making pressure on government, because this is not it becomes also politics, but it's not politics. It's not, it's, I think it's normal. I mean, what do you do? Invasion. When they tell you about invasion, always remind them only one number. In Europe, we are 550 millions. If we want to stay large with numbers, in the last year and a half, we've had 1,500,000 migrants arriving. So that's 0.04%. That's nothing. It's not an invasion. It's not a... In Italy, there are more young Italians who go abroad than migrants coming. Can you imagine this? So, what are we talking about? The first thing is to defeat is fear, and to defeat fear, we have to start changing the way of talking about migration. We've seen thousands of people that were founded like this and brought to the Italian shores. You know how much this thing costs to the Italian government and to the European Union? Well, going to pick up those who want to come will be much easier and less expensive, and you could organize everything better. We wouldn't have children dying in the Mediterranean Sea. And I'm sure we wouldn't have all these troubles about all these religious troubles we've had in the last year. Nobody will tell you when they say, hey, migrants come here, I don't know if there is a terrorist, but they come here to do terrorist attacks. 87% of the terrorist bombings and the terrorist attacks in the world last year were held in the countries where these people ran away from. In Europe, in the last 20 years, we had a reduction of terrorist attack. I mean, it's something terrible, terrorist attack. You don't know when they can reach you, you don't know where. I think of Bataclan, about Belgium, about Madrid. I mean, it's crazy, the London subway a few years ago. I'm not saying there is not this risk. But we don't have to live in fear for this. 20 years ago in Europe was worse. It was a little bit better in these countries where these people are running away from terrorists. They're not coming here to do terrorist bombing. They need help, and I think Europe has the duty to do this and help them. And I think that talking about migration in a different way, like we are doing today, is something that can help very much. Thank you.
Do you have any questions to Andrea? Yes?
I mean, you just didn't mention what exactly did the Italian Parliament did yesterday?
Oh, well, they decided to restrict the rules on migration. For example, the treaty with Libya, so we've asked the Libya Coastal Guard. You know, in Libya there are 4 governments. So I don't even know what government. There is one, I think the one we had the treaty with, that is a government that is inside a small port of Tripoli, and they don't know what happened 100 meters from that port. But we live inside this treaty with them, we give them money, they have this coastal guard, which is supposed to stop the boat coming to Italy, and saying, no, you don't go there, you go back. First of all. Second of all, it talks about expulsions. If you are an illegal migrant in the Italian territory, you get caught, you have to be sent back to your country. And if the country, unless you come from a country which the right is to give you protection. But for example, Sudan is not considered a dangerous country. You know, Sudan, I was at the UN in Geneva last week, is governed by al-Bashir, which is considered a war criminal. Well, Italy said, okay, yes, we give them back. So we find somebody here, a 16-year-old Sudani boy, we give him back in a country ruled by somebody that the UN consider a war criminal. Or even the building of many detention camps in all the regions of Italy. That's another thing that is included. And it's also there are even some rules about if they find you looking in the
Trash bins.
trash
bins.
If you're looking for things in the street, you can get arrested. So like guilty of poverty. It's crazy. This is what's happening.
Okay, let's thank Andrea again. We are a bit behind with time because we started a bit late, but we should do a virtual roundtable discussion now with Dirk, James, and Andrea. And the topic would be actually something that you mentioned in your talk, is basically how can NGOs deal with help actually dealing with the migrant influx. Dirk he works for the German Federal Police, and he was quite involved in actually handling the logistics of the migrants arriving to Germany, going towards Sweden, basically channeling these people in an organized way.
Yeah, so maybe since the other two have already presented, I'll do a short introduction of myself. I did a PhD in criminology until 2009 in Cambridge as a Gates Scholar as well. We started in 2005 in the same batch, and afterwards I joined the Federal Police of Germany, but I'm not here as a police officer. I'm here as a private person, a member of the Gates Scholars Network, and certainly my perspective, though, is informed also by this experience, which is certainly very different from what you've been talking about. Though I remember still 2015, the kind of alliance or interaction that we had also with civil society as something that still resonates very good. Like I remember we had there were a blame game between different institutions and so on in the public, and I didn't have to write to the newspaper that it was not our fault, the police was doing their job. The NGO, basically, they wrote it a letter, it was not the police and it was the other institution and so on. So that was really a good interaction. Basically, I have to say that generally the police obviously is not always the most respected profession when it comes to human rights, or there are innate difficulties also. But for me, I mean, I joined the police because to keep society civil, we have an equally fundamental role as civil society itself. So that's what we did basically. Also, what happened, and you could see, this is all public information. Basically, you could have seen, you saw the news that in 2015, especially when we had an influx of about 1 million refugees and migrants, and certainly institutions do have to make a difference between refugees and migrants. There's even a clear demand of the UNHCR to make a difference between these categories to protect refugees as well. So we had to handle this situation, and basically the government only found, and it's even funny that the government only found 2 institutions in society, or government institutions, to be able to deal with this situation, which is actually for the municipalities, the fire service, because they do 24 hours, they have a large-scale structure to handle mass situations. So it ended up really, in parts of Germany, the fire service for the municipalities dealing with putting up tents and so on, which is really quite different. It shows you also what strain there was on government institutions as well. And of course the police, who was doing basic humanitarian work quite far away also from what is the basic police duty with regards to criminals and so on. So for me it's always a bit disheartening if I hear your presentation and yours as well, that I mean government institutions in this kind of interaction, we can never be like this charismatic, this quick, so integrating interdisciplinary and releasing such resources the society didn't really have. Like people after work, they don't watch TV suddenly, they decide in masses to join, to help refugees and so on. I've seen just in hours, I've seen mountains of help, of food, of clothing and so on to mount. It was incredible. And the next day I thought, okay, I'm responsible here as a police, it's now my duty to clean up. No, they were already there. They slept 5 hours and they were already sorting and putting it in boxes, and like from nowhere there was a structure. But for me it's disheartening that we create the situation where we demand, like we force you to give driving courses and so on. It's really, there should be a more like this, for me, civil society that can work for a certain period, but it drains also your energy and so on. And the government is really normally, or the institutions is a way of giving structure and carrying out large-scale operations, probably not with the energy like you're contributing or so, but at some point there has to be like integration courses, education. Education is a government service. It has been a government service. I mean, other societies have different. They have a strong privatization, but for the European conception is that education basically is a government thing, and I think so. The government has to take over at some point to a large extent. And it's really for me disheartening when this energy that you, for example, are putting into if it's drained, or if government is not receptive and maybe contributing resources and so on. So I've seen civil society as a great partner in really covering emergency situations. Civil society is different. Like, you have a wealth of information, rumors and so on. Police has a very different way of dealing with rumors, of fact-checking and so on. We have a structure. You always know, you can look at the shoulder and you know who's responsible. That has always been much more difficult for us with civil society, also because the structure changes. It's very it's related to specific. Some projects just drop away if a certain person and so on. That's often difficult, but we've had very good experience, and it's now that it's so. I'm a social scientist. I deal with fuzzy facts. It's so complicated. We have also a rise of far-right responses also in Germany and other areas, but we need to uphold, I think, the interactions in Germany of 2015, the spirit that actually was there. We need to remember that. Sorry, that was a long entry statement.
Sorry, can I make a comment?
Yeah,
Why
sure.
are we not naming the reason for which the civil society is forced to do
Sorry?
what? Why are we not naming the reason for which the civil society is forced to do what the government are not doing? Because it's not a problem that the government is lower in organizing. The problem is that the governments cannot do anything because there is an agreement, the Dublin Agreement, that does not allow governments to do anything. Because if we would not have the Dublin Agreement, governments would not be enforced not to see that there are migrants on their ground. Because if a government recognizes, in the moment in which a government is recognizing that there are people on their ground, then there is an agreement, the Dublin Agreement, they're screwing it up.
Well, there I obviously, I'm familiar, let's say, with the perspective there. Is also the German perspective, which is actually that in 1994 there was a constitutional change in Germany that basically people arriving from safe third states meaning every country around Germany, because these are all democratic, safe states and so on, that they would not get asylum rights anymore. This was a constitutional change that was enacted, which basically reduced the chance of getting asylum in Germany in 1994 massively. This was a change that was enacted under heavy pressure also from far right. There was a lot of social turmoil in eastern Germany with the arrival. There was a large influx in this period, and then they said, like, the destabilization, now it's creating problems. Also, Germany is looking bad again. There are Nazis marching again, and so on. So basically, this was the safe state, third state agreement in Germany. Now, Schengen only if Schengen undermines this political decision of Germany if you don't have some Dublin component at the same time. Basically, Dublin is a continuation of this idea that basically the first safe country you arrive in, that's the place where you have asylum rights and
but
so on.
this is the reason for which the countries cannot recognize the fact that there are migrants arriving, because if a country would recognize and would start intervening, then it would have to recognize, it would have to say that there are people on their ground. So one of the main reasons, according to me, for which countries are actually leaving it to the civil society completely and actually going against the civil society that is working.
But I do think there are opportunities also, like already yesterday there was the idea there are unregistered people, so there cannot be help by the government. And I'm very familiar with this idea, because for government institutions this is a question of abuse of resources. I can't, if I have no legal context for giving resources for it, I can't spend them, so on. But certainly there are, like in 2015, like not everybody was registered, but still there was help for everybody. So there was also always a grey area and so on. But I think the Dublin one really has to see that Dublin is very closely linked to Schengen. Schengen, if Dublin falls, then Schengen is also...
No, because there was an extension that was proposed something like 4 months ago to the Dublin Agreement. It was to create a European register, not a state register. If we are in a European Union, why shouldn't there be a European register for people that are arriving instead of having
The
a
thing
state
is that,
register?
for example, people coming from Africa, of course they will get to Italy. They
Yeah,
cannot
of course, exactly.
land in Austria, for example.
Exactly. So you created. I mean, there was the Chianghe that was proposing it. It was the It was the
I think that the error was that Italy and Greece really penalized by the treaty, by the Dublin Treaty. So
It is
that
why they
is,
were proposing to extend it to, instead of creating a state register, it was proposed to create a European register. It was brought to the European Parliament and it was voted against.
Yeah.
It was
Like-
I mean, it
2
would
months.
be
It was 2
impossible
months
to
ago
be
or something like that.
No, but like,
accepted.
yeah, you know, the thing is, for example, now about I mean, there are some different within the European state. If migrants who land in Italy want to go to Germany, it's not only because of Bayern football club,
No.
but which is one of the reasons.
It's not.
But the reason is that, for example,
There's-
respectively, they're manifesting, giving you the response yes or no. And once they say yes, you have a welfare system that works.
But
You know,
have
in
to-
Italy, after a year and a half, they're still waiting
But you
for
have to be able to
the
reach it.
answer if they saw the narrative. I mean, they want to go to Germany because Germany it's better organized.
But you have to be able to reach it, and in order to
Yeah,
be
of
able to
course.
reach it, you will need to have a network of governments, not just a state society.
Yes, but you have to have a standard way also
standard
in
way,
the
yeah,
work
yes.
in reception.
Exactly.
Because of course they want to go to Germany.
Yeah.
If Germany works, and so it would be easy. Say I don't work, so you will never ask asylum here. You know, it's Italy's fault. I'm not saying you're too good. I'm saying we are too bad.
So basically what I just wanted to say is that Dublin is a continuation of how the situation was before, that it was in the 1990s, before Schengen. It was very difficult to get asylum in Germany because of the turmoil and the constitution changing decision in the early 1990. And I for sure have to respect that the democratic consensus is not cosmopolitan and so on. And So people with the Syrian situation and also with the economic situation in Germany being very good and so on, obviously Germany accepted an undermining of Dublin, the consequences and so on you're all aware of, but it's still just to abolish, to maintain Schengen, freedom of movement in Europe and get rid of Dublin. That's obviously a very thorny political decision. That's just not what is wanted.
What I just want to say is that if you do not do that, then it would be impossible to have the support of a formal support of the various states to what the civil society is doing. Because otherwise it would simply mean that you would have the states to recognize, for example, Italy would have to recognize how many people are arriving in Italy, and then Italy would have to host everybody, according to Dublin. Because the number of migrants are arriving to Italy is below the limitation of Dublin. And then we would have everybody would have formally to stay in Italy or in Greece.
Yeah, okay, we had
I just had a question regarding, I mean, what exactly is the direct connection between Schengen and Dublin? I mean, I do not think that they're as closely connected as you. I mean, you can have Schengen without Dublin.
You know, before Schengen, you had the German law saying that you have border controls, and at the border you would not receive an asylum request of a person coming from a safe state, like someone crossing, being detected at the German-Austrian border could not have a right to receive asylum in Germany. You would be, I don't know the English or the legal word in English, but he would be transported back to Austria. So when you take back the border controls due to Schengen, then you have the people flowing into the country, and you have no ability to track from which country they actually arrived in Germany. So you can't say you have come from Austria, you've come from Italy and so on. That's where you go. So before you had border controls to really determine where the person is coming from and to apply this rule. And if you don't have border controls, then you have no possibility to, like they're inside the country already, you have no possibility to apply, to enforce this rule, other than have this Dublin component, which, because in the first country in Europe where they arrived, they already went into a European database, and then you can determine where they have to go for their asylum.
So this has to do more with the actually the processing of the influx, right? So that you actually register people in the country they arrive in.
But it's not just a matter of registering people.
Well, this would be the first step.
Yeah. But the problem of the agreement is not the problem of registering people. It's the problem that people should stay.
Yeah, should stay. Yeah.
That's
so,
the problem.
but
Because if you would only register people, actually it would be even healthy, because you would have a register of people and then you could assist.
Yeah.
But then if you only, this would be healthy. And then if you would create a European database, then you would support, you would be able to support and to assist, even to assist while going from one state to the other. What is happening now, I was, for example, on a train between Austria and Germany. And in Austria there were this self-organized group, they're called, I don't remember, they're Hope for Migrants or something like this, I don't remember, Train of Hope. So practically what they were doing was a self-organized group. They were assisting, a bit like Baobab, they were assisting migrants that wanted to go to reach Germany. And
it was the train from here to Austria.
It was the same from Austria to Germany, while I was going to Frankfurt. And what happened is that this group of people, they buy the tickets, they assist the migrants, and they put them in the train. They cannot travel with them because it would be illegal if it would be accompanying the migrants. So they give them the tickets. At the border, police armed came on the train and started going around. And then it was unbelievable. They were going around, and they were looking at everybody that did not look German or did not look Austrian. So there was, for example, a guy from Philippines that was, and then they were asking people, passport, no passport, go down, and they put the people down in the middle of the street.
This has been happening at the German as well for several months.
Look, I think that then he will answer about this, but the thing is that, of course, if you have to control the borders, and that's what I was talking about. When I say that, I understand that for you is different. But for me, really I don't care. He's running away because he was living under the bombs, or because he was hungry, or now we have to start talking about environment refugees. You know, there is this big issue that's coming out. Of course, i rifugiati ambientali. It's the thing is, because I don't have to ask. I mean, I see he is in trouble, and really, if he's in trouble because he's been tortured in his, or he didn't have anything to eat, or because a big, I don't know, a big European maybe, or American, North American industry was built there now, and it's all poisoned the air. I mean, he's running away. What I know is that nobody is happy to go away from his land. They are all sad. If you read on the walls of Baobab on the street, the only thing you will read in Tigrinya, in Amarino, in Arabic, in Swahili, the thing is, sorry, Mama Africa, I promise I will come back. They all have a pain inside for leaving their country, their village, their city, first of all. So nobody's happy to leave their country. So if they're forced to leave, they have a reason, first of all. And the second reason, I understand that for me it's different than from for the police or for the government or for, but of course, if I start making difference, of course it will be something that at the borders, you will start to be stopped, even, for example, by the color of your skin. There is an Italian Somali writer, Jabba Shego, young, very good, very famous. She wrote a book, Adwa, about Italian colonialism, but she makes novels. She's very known in Italian. She's been translated in many languages. She wrote a beautiful article a month ago about Journey's apartheid, she calls it. A world where, depending on what passport you have in your pocket, permits you or doesn't permit you to travel as much as you want, where you want, in a world with an apartheid. We call it Journey apartheid. My daughter, she's 18 years old, she has an Italian passport, she wants to do the whole tour of the world, she can do it. Same year old, same situation. I mean, of course, it's not the same situation. An 18-year-old girl from Ethiopia cannot do it. Then we have a problem.
This is inequality. We can't really change it.
Yeah, but we're talking
really
about
hard.
moving. We're talking about migration, moving, and freedom of movement. Maybe that's why the French Revolution, the first thing they did was to abolish passports.
Yes.
I just want to add this, going back to the Dublin rule, during the 2015 crisis, the influx of refugees, this actually confused us a little bit because there were so many refugees in the city and at the border, and so we were helping give food, clothes, and everything. But at the same time, we were wondering why they were not staying in the camp. Okay, there were so many people in the camp, even when there were places for people to stay. And we tried to say, you know, it's not good outside, it's very bad to sleep outside, and the tent, maybe it's good to stay in the camp. But we didn't know that the refugees already got information that you go to the camp, get fingerprinted, wherever you go, you're going to be returned here in Hungary. And they also know about the situation, they don't want to stay here. But, I mean, some of them that we had confidential discussions, they said this is why they don't want to go to the camp to stay. Because all of those people in the camp, they've been fingerprinted, That's why they can't go anywhere in Europe. So it's better for them to stay on the street until they go to where they are going. And they already know where they are going. Okay. Even those in the camp, they were not happy when they had the information that with their fingerprint here, they cannot go anywhere in Europe. And I also think that because there is a different treatment of refugees in other countries, and that is why they have to choose where to go. To be honest, as I lived, even when I lived in the refugee camp, I just didn't know. Like, I don't know anything about you. I didn't know much before I came. Never even heard about Hungary. Didn't know a country called Hungary existed before I left. Also, didn't know that there are different languages in Europe. I thought they all spoke English. So, and most people I met in the camp left. But I didn't know where to go, and I was afraid. But when they go and call their friends, they say they are treated well in other countries, in Germany, in Austria, in Netherlands, and other people are going. But I was afraid of going anywhere because first I didn't want to leave my country. And here I am, people don't speak my language, and I look completely different. So it was difficult. And what I'm saying is, of course, people want to be treated as humans first. Okay, you have to be seen as human before you start to treat the person in a way of his color or his country. And that is why people are paying attention. Of course, I would like to go where I would be accepted, okay? Or maybe where I would not suffer learning difficult languages. But as a refugee, I had no choice. And it's the same thing with the refugees now. Of course, they don't mind, but they want to be seen as humans. They want to be respected. They want to be loved. They want to be cherished. Okay, and trying to deal with refugees here, thinking that if they are treated with a harsh method, this migration will stop. It's not true, to be honest, because you cannot live. I wouldn't live in my country. Okay, at a point, I remember thinking about, hey, it's better to end this life, but you can't kill yourself. There are two things. Either you take the sea and die there, or you stay at home and die. And okay, you think about, if I cross the sea, maybe I will be saved. But if I stay at home, I will definitely die because the bombs are falling, just like in Syria. You can't stay. It's impossible to stay in a country like Syria right now. And thinking that without making peace in Syria, the migration issue will end, or migrants will stop living, trying to cross to Europe, it's impossible. Except there is peace in those countries. If there is peace, people wouldn't leave. I was at the border.
Excuse me, but it has to be peace. I mean, it's difficult for me to understand that in Iraq and Afghanistan now there is peace, as government try to tell me. We don't accept them as refugees because everything. Iraq is a country with the most terrorist attack in the world.
There is no peace there. It depends on what people think is peace. But what I'm saying is there is no, and apart from the wars happening now, I had a discussion last week with a Hungarian friend, and I said there is great imbalance in the economic situation of this world. There are some parts, some countries where they don't manufacture nothing. It's just a consuming country. You produce here and send to them, and they can't survive with the standard of economy in that country. They have natural disasters like earthquake and lack of rain, and there is hunger. These factors can lead people to leave in the country, okay? But when you look at here, and I remember when Ghanaian was discovered by the authorities, I read this in the newspaper, and why do you put yourself in a ship carrying, I don't know, it's a container, and it's a very risky journey. And he said, well, you see one part of the world crying all the time, and another part of the world is laughing all the time, smiling. So things are good here, things are not good here. And just talking about, even there are no wars, but there is no economic stability or support for economic stability in certain countries. There is no support to create jobs. And for this reason, people, even with degrees, they cannot find a job, for example. They'll be looking at, where can I find a job? And they see somebody who leave the country and come back doing very well, okay? And maybe had no education, actually. And he's done something great, and say, oh, where are you coming from? Oh, I'm coming from Europe or America. Oh my God, I'm gonna go. Whatever it takes, I'm going to go there. So that is the impact of economic instability in any country. It's also causing problems. So then with the war happening, but the thing is this: in Europe, there are migrants. There will always be. Whatever happens, there will be. And the thing is, what do we do? How can these people be helped? I have colleagues who are helping migrants who want to return, who voluntarily want to return. And the thing is, I was asking, if a migrant volunteer to return, how can he reintegrate in the country? Is there any kind of support to reintegrate him? Or he's just going back with maybe $2,000 or euros, and he gets back to the country, and he has nothing to do. He has no skill to start with, and he has this money which he doesn't know what to do with it. He's going to waste that money. In a year, he's regretting why he came back. He wants to go back. But there is somebody, there's a documentary I watched. Someone was returned to Nigeria from Italy. When he was visited by a journalist and asked, how do you feel? Do you regret leaving Italy back to Nigeria? And he said, well, I regret not coming back earlier. If I knew, I would have even returned home earlier, because he had the chance to learn skills. He's a plumber, and he went back, established his own company, and he became successful, and even regretted not going back earlier. So even these people who are being returned, no skills, nothing to hold hand and reintegrate into the society, and he's going to go back there, and he's like a completely new person in a new country. It's going to be difficult to reintegrate, and he's going to be thinking to go back to another country instead of staying in that country. So what I think now is, which is what our organization is trying to adopt, to engage these people is going to serve. I said that it helps us as well, because the way it is right now, if anything dangerous happens in this country, we're going to there's going to be hatred against the migrants. So the best thing is that we keep engaging the migrants and refugees, so nothing dangerous happens, and also include the Hungarians. And I don't, I must also commend Hungarians, because so many Hungarians came out, so many young people during the refugee influx here to volunteer to help all the refugees. And right now we open doors as well for Hungarians to join free our program. Because actually that is one way we want to integrate the migrants. So there's no point having only refugees and migrants attending these courses alone, because sometimes Hungarians come up to me and say, we want to join this course. And you say, oh no, it's supported by the European Union, it's only for migrants, because that's the European rule. If you have a program supported by the European Union, there's no European citizen allowed to take part. It's for the migrants or refugees. We are suffering for this. So that is why all our language courses or other courses that are not supported by the European Union will allow Hungarians to come in, and they are happy, they enjoy it. So we need to engage people, give them skills, so even when they go back, they will have something at hand to start with. And that is not what is happening. This is not a popular issue right now, but I think this is what needs to be done. Why the UN, play politics with making peace in those war-torn countries, which is not actually happening.
As a social scientist and a police officer, I have little illusions about integration. So there were also in Germany illusions circulating, like handing over, here's the German constitution in your language and that's going to make you a citizen, or here are the TV channels, the German, let's watch German TV. And so I think you're right on the money when you say what is important, because it matters to both, to the welcoming society and to the other, is education and workplace. Both are interested in because society doesn't work otherwise. You can't be unemployed for 5-10 years and so on. It's going to create problems. So if you find concentrate on work skills and education, that is pivotal. And I think the cultural integration, maybe that's going to happen with the next generation and so on. With the Italians, of course, you had Little Italy, and you will have in Germany. You can already see little Syrias in certain corners, because that's very natural that they also are looking for something that is familiar and so on. But if you have a channel into the workplace, and that's tough enough, also in Germany at the moment, then that's very important.
Okay, thank you very, very much. We do a 20-minute tea break, and then we reconvene at 11:30.
Okay, so the other question was